Okay. Okay. Hey, that worked. Okay, so what we have is we have a handout. We have a chart, which is a chart of the genealogies, which I figure as we're reading through them, it would make more sense to have the chart. And then on the map, and I know I couldn't print this any larger, but on the map, it's going to show where the different children of, or the descendants of Noah ended up in the Middle East and the Mediterranean area. So we'll kind of watch that as we go through. So let me organize the papers here. So we're in Genesis chapter 10. So, we came out of 3, 6, 7, 8. We came out of 4 chapters of the flood. And that's a big Bible story. The flood's a big, is a big deal. So and we've got all the stuff that happened, and we saw the sons of God and the daughters of man, and who those people were. Were they giants? Were they angels? Were they UFOs? Whoever they were, we found out that God was mad at the way man had turned out. He even said that he regretted making man. Anyway, we had the flood, we had the gathering of the animals, we had the building of the ark, we had the flood, we had the year on the boat, and then they got off. And when they got off, Noah built an altar, then a sacrifice, prayer, and they were off to the races again. Problem is, they were off to the races the same way they were before the flood. So then Noah plants a vineyard, gets drunk. Whatever happened with Ham and Noah, if anything, or if it's just disrespect, we don't know for sure. Ham's 4th son Canaan gets cursed, and then Noah died. Okay, so that was that whole 4 chapters of the flood. And then in chapter 11, we're going to have the Tower of Babel. Babel. Anyway, we're going to have the Tower of Babel and that weird incident of what happened. And that's exciting. That's exciting stuff. And then we'll get into the lineage, which gets us to Abraham and the start of the Jewish, the Israeli people. But stuck here in chapter 10 is just a genealogy. It's just a list of names of people, of families, of the descendants, talks a little bit about where they spread out to. And most people skip over it. I mean, you just give a glance down and go, okay, those are a whole bunch of people. What does that mean to me? Well, it has to mean something. Otherwise, God wouldn't have put it in there. So you think about it. I mean, if God put it in there, it must mean something. But it must be there for a purpose. And so then it's a matter of, so what's that? What's that purpose? Anybody got an idea what that purpose is? Well, let us know what happened. Fills in that gap of probably a couple hundred years, or like that. And maybe somebody had a genealogy written down and got caught with the papers in the Bible and just got stuck there by you don't know. But that's not what happened. So what I want to do is get into a little bit about what it is. So chapter 10 is known as the Table of Nations because it contains the genealogies. Oops, hang on, I got to get my paper. But anyway, it contains the genealogies of of all those people. It's also called. I can't believe my papers. Hang on a second. Does anybody have like a 7-8 page handout instead of a couple of page handout?
Can we trace Noah back to Adam?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Huh. I left it on my desk. Hang on a second. I'm looking here. We're all done. Anybody have more than a 2-page handout? Huh? Yeah, that's just great. Okay. Yeah. Huh. Huh. What's that? I may have left it at home. That's okay. I can do it from. I can kind of do it from memory, except I got a whole bunch of quotes in there. That's an old one. Hold on a second. I'm gonna. What's that? No. Let's. Yeah. Hang on. Wow. I must have left it on my. Desk at home. Yes. Okay, that's okay. Okay. Lyda has a question. You got a microphone there. Okay, listen up. Lyda has a question.
All I want to know is what patriarchs mean.
Well, patriarchs are the fathers.
Oh,
The fathers.
That
They're
means
the fathers of the nations. They're the. Like if we had. If we lived in a more male-oriented society, the patriarchs would have been like the tribal chiefs.
I thought they were more patriotic.
Yeah, really.
So then I think that you think that you're the private.
Okay, let's move on. Anyway, so it's called the Table of Nations. Okay. Yeah. Okay, listen up. So it's called the Table of Nations because it contains the genealogical tables of Noah's descendants and the nations that came from him. Okay, so it's trying to say, how do we get, we got Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, their wives, they come off the ark. How do we get to Abraham? Or what populates the earth? I mean, they would put on a sign, city limits, Ararat, elevation 12,000 feet, population 8. Yeah, and that's it. So what this does is it divides it up. So the Bible divides the world of that time into 70 nations. Okay, and we're going to see that out of all those people listed there, it's going to come to 70 peoples. Okay, and if anybody wants to count through them and fact check me, that's perfectly fine. I'll go with your number. Okay. So, but see, the number 70 has significance. We've talked about this in the past. The number 7, the number 10. These are numbers, God's numbers of completion, and that. And so this isn't New Testament stuff. Like in Book of Revelation, you see all kinds of numbers. I think when we're starting the Book of Revelation in the Master's Men, we went through a whole list of numbers and how many times it gets used in the scriptures. Number 40. Moses on top of Mount Sinai for 40 days, 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus 40 days, during his temptation. All these things. So that's what these numbers are. So 70. Whether it's an actual 70 or the writer here is trying to use that symbolic number, I tend to believe that it's 70. Like that, because I think God wrote it. He doesn't need to, to fool us in that. So anyway, so that, that keeps reoccurring. So the chapter is another example of the Bible text that seems irrelevant, but is in fact not only significant, but revolutionary. You look at other writings from these nations that came out of the flood and how they wrote their histories, and they never wrote about the peoples of the world, because this is going to be the peoples of the world. They always write about their people, So this is quite different from what. Now remember the thing with Genesis. Genesis is talking about an ancient kind of a prehistory time, but it's given by God to Moses, who's living in the Exodus. So when it talks about stuff like that, we can say, yeah, those other groups, because otherwise someone's going to say, well, wait a minute, these are the first groups. Where'd those other groups come to write their histories? Well, this is talking 1,000 years later or whatever. So these people have written. Anyway, so there's nothing like it. The God of the Bible is the God of the world, not just of the Jews. The Jews are were chosen to be a blessing to the nations. So here's the importance of this genealogy, is that it shows that God is speaking about the nations of the world, that he is the God of all nations. He's not just the God of the Jews. He's not just the God of, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because all of this is way before that happened. So these are all God's people. Whether these people want to be God's people, that's another story. But they're God's people. God created them. When they scattered, God put them where he wanted them. Let's put it that way. That he did all of that. So now these nations are established. And then when he gets to the promises to the nation Israel, he says, you will be a blessing to the nations. He had to set up the nations. He had to set up the nations first. So, a couple of things. Robert Alter. Yeah. Robert Alter is a Hebrew scholar, translator. He does it all. Commentator, from a Jewish point of view. I want to say he teaches up at Berkeley. But probably right now, he's probably the contemporary most, scholar of the Old Testament from a Jewish point of view. He says, in keeping with the universalist perspective of Genesis, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about a whole world of Genesis before we ever get to the Jew stuff. The Table of Nations is a serious attempt, unprecedented in the ancient Near East, to sketch a panorama of all known human cultures, from Greece and Crete to the west through Asia Minor, Iran, down through Mesopotamia and the Arabian Peninsula to northwestern Africa. If you look at the map, I wish I could have printed it bigger, but I couldn't. If you look at the map, that's a whole Mediterranean area, northern Africa, Arabia, Middle East, whatever you want to call it, even going up into Europe. So as we go, we'll see how they move. So it's almost like God's playing chess. Chess probably isn't the right.
What's that mean? Lord?
Risk.
That's
Risk. That's right. God's playing risk. So he's moving armies here. No, he's moving people here. He's moving people there. See, he's a Bible scholar. He knows what's happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't risk your life.
Yeah. And the thing is that, archaeologists use the Bible to go find these things. They go, wait a minute, there must have been, the Bible says there was an ancient civilization here. Let's go dig around here and see what we find, if anything. I mean, let's see what we find when we're out there. I did that when we were talking about Noah, when he was building the ark, and he used pitch. Did he use pitch? Is that what he used to waterproof the ark? Yeah, he used pitch. And that pitch is a petroleum product. And that John D. Rockefeller, I don't think he was a religious guy. Maybe somebody pointed this out to him. Anyway, pointed out to him and says, hey, they used pitch in the Middle East. He went out there, drilled. Hey, guess what's under all that sand as we know it today? Oil. But supposedly, at least where the story goes, it's because he read it in the Bible that they had pitch. He knew what the pitch was. He knew it's oil. Must be under there, somewhere. I mean, they've been, digging in Texas and all that in Oklahoma and finding all the oil already. But there must be a whole bunch, that's out there. And the same way archaeologists do. They look, you follow the people, you follow what God says, and you find, their broken pottery. So, I don't know, I'm just trying to build up to why we get into these. Bruce Walke, this is a Christian scholar. He says the Table of Nations represents the nations as of one blood, multiplying under God's blessing as distinct tribes of nations. So what he's talking about is, and this is a big thing that we need to remember, because Christians have been, at least in the past, as racist as anybody, like that, without realizing that people are of one blood. They're one people, one blood, and there's no, there's no difference. Like that. So then David asked last week, well, where did the races come from? Well, people mutate because of environments. You can watch it in the animal. It doesn't mean evolution. It doesn't mean that kind of evolution. It doesn't mean that a horse is going to turn into a dog, or people are going to turn into a, something. But what it means, because of your environment, or the way that the mixture of people together, even though they're kind of the same over time, your DNA breaks down. I'll say breaks down instead of elevates, because I don't know if it, it elevates, and then over periods of time, people change features. I see. Now I don't know. Now maybe some of you do. I don't know if you took a blood sample of people of different races, if you found A positive people in every race and you took their blood, does it come out chemically, biologically different? I don't think so. It's probably all you and Nurse. It's probably just all, like that. So it's just those little differences that over time, do it. Now, I don't know. If you took a black family, say out of Africa, and moved them up to, and there's a wild guess on my part, and you moved them to Canada, I mean, in 100 generations, would they become white people? Well, they might. I mean, we don't know. Why wouldn't they? If they mutate one way or the other,
That's good.
No, well,
The color of it.
well, I mean, I don't know. What I'm saying is, I don't know if the environment changes them. I just don't know. But pardon?
Well, you have the Alaskan Eskimos, and they have dark skin.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're in a cold climate, so.
Yeah, but maybe they haven't reached 100 generations yet. I don't know. I don't see. Here's the thing: you look at colors. Like, see, I say that we're all the same color with just different shades. See, I'm a white person. Am I white? I mean, so if, well, I'm not, this is white, I'm not white. If you took a black person, pardon? So if you took a black person and you held them up to lightest case here, are they gonna be black? No, or Asian, huh? No, but see, Hudson's probably. See, here's the thing, and I'm trying to answer Dave's question about the races. Here's the thing, Hudson's probably the perfect color, and some of us got lighter, and some of us got darker. And for whatever reason.
DNA does all kinds of stuff, right? Otherwise, we'd all look the same. We'd all have blonde hair, blue
Well,
eyes.
and that's the thing. Why doesn't everybody look like Noah?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. She'll be performing here all week. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, these are the things that we don't know. All we know is we have a start from Noah, and then we're going to see his descendants go, and we're going to see them go to different, going to different places, and and Noah's wives. We know where Noah's sons came. They came from Noah and Mrs. Noah. Okay. I think that's a good guess. Yeah. But we don't know where the wives came from. So say that, so the sons all have the same genes, DNA, whatever. We have no idea where the wives came. You got to remember, we've got from the time of, say, Seth, Canaan went off, Seth was born, then Noah had many sons and daughters, it says in chapter 5. And and then they go different places, and after they're done marrying first cousins for all that time, it branches out, and then somehow they meet up with Shem, and then another woman meets up with Ham, and another one with Japheth, and maybe they're from totally different environments and mixtures of DNA, and so we don't know. We don't know. Okay, so, but God's just saying that they're there. Okay, so the narrator presents a symbolic 70 nations, whether it's symbolic or not, based on ethnic, geographic, linguistic, and political factors. 70 nations are given, and we're going to see there's 14 from Japheth, 30 from Ham, and 26 from Shem. Okay. Just so you don't have to count through them. Now here's the thing with the 70. In Judges chapter 8, talking about Gideon, it says Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. So Gideon had 70. Again, we got that number 70. In 2 Kings 10, it says, now Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. And it goes on. So, this 70 gets used. It's meaning something, unless it's either meaning actual 70 or it's got a symbolic, meaning. Okay.
What? Nobody was living past 120 years.
No, we don't know that. I thought that we discussed that. Well, my theory is that what he was saying is that man only has 120 years left, and then I'm flooding the place. He says, I won't put up with, what's he say? I won't put up with man's spirit for more than 120 years, something like that. It said, something like that. I think what he was saying is, you may have it in you to live 900 years, but you ain't gonna make it. Now, because of the flood, ages were cut down. Wait a minute, how old did Isaac lived, and some of them lived 180. We'll find out. Yeah, no, they lived 180. I think that 120 meant mark it on your calendar. Doomsday coming.
No, what about 300?
After the flood, right? But he was already alive. I mean, it could be that meant, okay, anybody born after that won't. But I'm just trying to remember. I think Isaac, I think, was the shorter one. And then I think Jacob was longer, more than 120 years. So.
That's better, because the 120 years is 70 years. It's really big.
Yeah. Well, even, yeah, but then, no, I mean, if you've got, depends on how many wives you got. You can have 10 pregnant at a
7
time.
days in a week.
Funny thing though is afterwards, 35 through all those centuries. People lived about 35 or 40.
You're talking about like
Yeah, I mean, after Jesus
modern
died, yeah.
times, yeah.
I mean, the life expectancy
Well,
was.
here's the thing. See, I think Adam and Eve, especially Adam, I think was the perfect man. Okay, because he was made to live forever. The others after sin weren't made to live forever. So, and then he couldn't live forever because God cut him off from the tree of life. But the thing is that, so I think that man has evolved since that time. Now, our medicine's better. The only difference between us, you pick the most wicked civilization you could think of, okay? Back in the Middle Ages or whatever. The only thing that's changed from us is our medicine's better. So we're probably not as grumpy because we're healthier. Okay? And our technology is better. But in the meantime, we're really no different than they were. We can go to the grocery store to get our food. We don't have to go hunt our food, or we don't have to kill the tribe next to us to get their food or to get their hunting lands. So that's the only kind. That doesn't mean we're not better people. I'm telling you, power grid goes down in this town for a month, we'll be eating each other.
I am so.
Yeah, solar. No, I mean, I don't know how long it would take us to get down to that kind of savage age. I mean, with us, maybe we're old enough, we'd rather just die and be done with it. But I'm telling you, I'm not saying younger people because they're younger people. I'm just saying people who think they're going to be able to survive by doing that. So, Andy. When you mean when you say we, you're talking about you and Pastor Callier? Yeah.
There's places in the world though that people do live long longevity.
Yeah.
But I think that's the environment and how they live. What they eat.
Yeah. Well, the guys I read about the guy, I don't know, a month ago, maybe, was having his 104th birthday, I think, and he credited Jack Daniels and no, he did. Yeah, cigars and Jack Daniels and stuff like that. So, but anyway, okay, that's up. Anyway, so but the 70 means something when we go into that. So, let's see. Oh, here's another one talking about when remember, well, I shouldn't say remember, like if we ever get to it, Abraham's family descended, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob had the 12 sons. The one son was Joseph. Joseph got taken into Egypt. Joseph became the second most powerful, second to the Pharaoh there during the famine. And it's a long, convoluted story, but he had the family come to Egypt with him. Okay. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were two persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. So we've got that 70 number, still in there. Now I'll give you one here. In the Septuagint, okay, the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was done. It was completed like 250 years before Jesus was born, okay, because the Greeks had taken over all the Middle East and it was a Greek-like society. It's like most Jews here today don't pull out a Hebrew Bible, a Bible written in Hebrew to read it because they can't read Hebrew like that. So they pull out an English version of their Hebrew Bible. So the Septuagint is just that. But it was supposedly written by 70 rabbis, faithful rabbis who wanted to convey the word of God to the Jewish people who were living in a Greek culture. But it says and I looked it up in my Septuagint, too. It says 75 instead of 70 when it talks about families, that go. And I have a point here that's not related to the genealogies, but in Acts chapter 7, Acts chapter 7 is when Stephen, the first martyr, is reviewing all of Jewish history as he's being killed. And he's talking to the Jews there, how bad they're doing and all that, and that they're killing them. But in there, when he gets to the Joseph story and the people coming out of it, he says 75, which means he's using the Septuagint. He's using the Greek translation because even the Jesus Jews didn't necessarily read Hebrew like that. And there's many quotations from Jesus and Paul where they quote out of the Greek translation. That's what's happening. Luke is writing, Acts here, and he's quoting Stephen quoting the Septuagint. How it got to 75, don't know. I don't know. You got to understand something about English letters. Now, if we were Hebrews, we would know the difference, okay? But they got a little, one letter, and then they got a little something on the corner of it, and it changes it. Just that little, thing there. So if it gets smudged, well, no, you got to remember these people are. What are they writing on? They're writing on sheepskins and tablets and stuff like that. And what if somebody's got bad handwriting? If I had to write in script, you would never read. Because I print all caps, and I've done that since the 8th grade. But yeah, if I wrote a page in script, you wouldn't know what I was saying. So pardon? Yeah, I know. Well, it's funny because I grew up for 3 years in France and went to French school. And there you had to dip in the ink.
You're that old too, huh?
Little stylus and that, and you had to do it, and to do it right, you had to have, be a thin part of the letter, then a thick part of the letter, and that's how I learned to write. By the time I got back to America, all of a sudden I couldn't write anymore, and I still don't. Yeah, I know.
I got the full Jewish Hebrew edition of the Old Testament, but what was this Greek? How do you spell that?
The Septuagint, just like it sounds. It's SEPTU. I think it's GENT something. Septuagint. You could look it up as LXX, the Roman numerals for 70. It was written by the 70 rabbis. Like that, so it's LXX. That's the way you mostly see it written out. No, I know. Yeah. So Anyway,
TUA,
huh?
STP, TUA,
UA.
TUA.
Yeah, it's all Greek to me.
Google or face? Google.
Okay, so, this is my last book, then we're gonna go through the list of people, okay? This is from William F. Albright, okay? And he's the foremost archaeologist of the 20th century, okay? I mean, he's a linguist and all this stuff. He goes on these digs, he finds all the pottery, he knows everything about the pottery and stuff like that. He's been dead for about 50 years, but when I first became a Christian, he was the big deal. I mean, if you needed anything on archaeology or anything, everybody quoted. You read any of Josh McDowell's materials, or they all quote William F. Albright. But he said, the 10th chapter of Genesis stands alone in ancient literature, without a remote parallel, even among the Greeks, where we find the closest approach to a distribution of peoples and genealogical framework. He says the Table of Nations remains an astonishing, accurate document. I mean, that's pretty big praise for something that we all skip over. You know, of him saying how important, how important this is. So, okay, well, let's get into the text. It's now I broke this down a little bit so it shows the descendants of Noah's kids, then the grandkids, and so otherwise it gets all it's one big mush, reading. It says, now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons were born to them after the flood. It's specifying these are the kids of Noah's 3 kids born after the flood. So now here's the thing, how did these records, were these records, these genealogies passed down? We talked about this early on in Genesis, in the very beginning. How did it all get to Moses? Were people keeping these genealogies? Genealogies were of utmost importance. It was like a caste system. You had to know your genealogy to find out which you're royal or lowly or whatever. And so did these get passed down and passed down, passed down? And then when the flood started, because you got to remember what all these people like Methuselah was Noah's father, and Methuselah lived 960 years or whatever it was. But we also said that Seth, I didn't say it, I read this, that Seth was still alive when Methuselah was born. Okay? So did Seth say, Methuselah, I want to give you this. We start out talking about my parents, Adam and Eve, or however it would have worked. And then did Methuselah, when it starts to rain, does he say, Noah, take these on the ark? Well, he could have. I mean, and then so all that stuff that was the genealogies that were in chapter 5, now they're on the ark, and now they're off the ark, and Noah's saying to his kids before he dies, got to pass these on, and that they pass them on. Families used to do that in modern times. The thing is that, see, I don't know how you guys do. I know I don't do, and I know my kids don't do. You could sit down with great grandma and she'll tell you everything about the family, because they pass the stories down. Where they, even when they used to write their kids' names in the Bibles, and they got all these genealogies in the family Bible. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore. But they used to do it. So when we say, well, did they pass it down? Methuselah, here, no, I take these. Maybe it's that important that he did.
I have a German Bible that was passed on, was my great grandfather's, of course, I can't read it, but the genealogy
Yeah.
for the family.
Yeah, so so when you look at it that way, it's not so unusual that these genealogies get passed down, because most people would say, how would they keep record of all of that? They just do, they just do, and we don't. People before radio and TV and all the modern stuff, people used to memorize massive portions of the Bible. And we can't even remember where we left our Bible in the house, let alone, memorizing. So people have that capacity. We've just flooded it with all the things that we think are important that really aren't. If you were going to say something, Ray?
Yeah, my wife is a deep interest in her ancestry, and she's gone and sent in samples of her DNA or blood samples, and they traced her DNA. And through Ancestry.com, she's been able to trace a lot of her ancestry. She's contacted them by phone or whatever, and come to find out, hey, yeah, I'm a relative. I'm a third cousin, twice removed, whatever.
Yeah.
And I live in such and such a place, give me a call or come by and visit. And she had relatives in Vegas and then also down in Georgia that she's come in contact with, that they were part of the family.
What would be interesting if she did the same thing and did it with a different company like that 23andMe and see if they come out the same. Because I never, what they do is they give you an array of, you came from these 20 people groups, yeah. But my daughter called me one time, this is a couple of years ago, and she goes, I got a strange call from a guy, and he wanted to know if we were related. And I go, so tell me about it, because she hadn't really committed anything to him. But she said that she goes, you know a guy, you have a relative named Ray West? And I go, yeah, it's my cousin. And we're kind of a separated family. I mean, we're friendly, but I see Ray at funerals. Seriously, because he always comments about that. We only see each other at funerals. Like that. I go, yeah, that's my cousin. Why? She goes, well, this guy says he's his son. And I guess he did one of those tests. I guess my daughter had done one too, and it was on a file, somewhere, and like that. So, but I don't. Does your wife do it for other people, or just for herself?
She was trying to do it for me, but my ancestry is kind of, it was short.
My family tree was a hanging tree. So, yeah. But no, Cindy Bunmeyer does genealogies, I think. Yeah, I think she's big into, obviously, the Mormon church. In fact, I think that Ancestry.com started, I don't know if they were Mormon, but they started by looking into the records that the Mormons were, that they were using. Because, I mean, they're very, very big on it even to this day, because they have to find out who hasn't been baptized, so that that's what they call the baptism for the dead. But that's a different story, just about the genealogies. So, oh yeah, no, they're the only ones that do it right. We don't do any of it. Does anybody here keep track of their family? I mean, but see, you're from close to that generation, like that. Like your grandma probably passed on to you before you got on Noah's boat. No, but passed on. But really, yeah.
Somebody adopt me.
My genealogy, the genealogy goes way back, goes to wherever it started, goes back to Noah, but my genealogy that we know of doesn't go past my grandfather, because they came over from Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution. They were the only ones that came out, and it was my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunt, my uncle. who came, they came through Ellis Island, and then they had my dad born in New York. And that's it, there was some talk that he had a brother that maybe escaped and went to South America. But I mean, it doesn't, so mine's easy to keep track of. And then I've got 2 brothers and I've got 3 cousins. 3 cousins on both sides, my mom and dad. I mean, just 3. So we're a small.
On my mother's side, there was an uncle that maybe 40, 50 years ago. So how old I am. But came out and visited my mom and dad. And he traced my mother's surname back to 1520.
Really?
The book we have is about this thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're there, and then you see where they've been, and if it's kept right, you see how they got to where they got to, like my grandparents were in Russia. I don't know if they were somewhere else before that, and maybe 2 generations before that, they migrated, from some other place in Eastern Europe up there, we don't know. My point is this is what they did, in chapter 10. They kept record, and there was a reason for it. God probably had a different reason than they had. They may have, like I said, just been keeping track so they can keep track of who their family was, so they don't associate with the wrong people, or whatever, however we might want to look at it. God's purpose was to show that all the people of the world are his. That's the important part. All the people of the world are his. And then that's when I got into the one race thing, and just to tie that all together. We just need to remember we're all the same race. And how we started thinking, some races were better than other races. Hopefully it was for socioeconomic reasons. I mean, yeah, those people in the poorer countries, the less advanced countries, if they were a different color, then they must be lesser people. I don't know. I was lucky, and probably the only good thing about growing up in Southern California, is that Southern California has never been a racist, divided, place. I mean, we had the Watts riots, and we had the Rodney King thing, but that was a modern kind of a thing, and that's just people who hate. But I'm just saying that, but for the most part, schools weren't segregated, churches weren't segregated. I mean, it just was not. I saw a hand. Oh, Jackie.
Because anybody watch last week? There was from one sperm donor. All kids found each other. From one sperm donor, we had like 100 kids.
Was his name Gideon? Right.
All these women had children with him, and there was 100.
Yeah.
And they found out that they were half brothers and sisters, all those kids.
Yeah. You know what? And here's the thing, and I'm not going to say anything about artificial insemination or stuff like that. But I'm just saying, but this is what mankind has done. And also that stuff becomes natural. Jared.
I have no record of my birth, period. Doesn't exist.
You know what? Melchizedek didn't have any record of his birth either. So.
And Troy, through ancestry.com, has found my mother for sure, and 80%, 87% sure of my father. So interesting.
Where were you born, on a cow pasture? What's the
I was born in a children's home.
Oh, really?
No, that's where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody is like that. I mean, because you told me like you're 88 years old, so that goes back quite some, goes back. I wonder if anybody today is born in those circumstances.
I had to go to the children's home to get a passport, for example. and get
Really?
social security.
Yeah,
Uh,
isn't that something? Maybe as a church group, we ought to hire one of these ancestry groups and find out, maybe we're all related. I mean, besides the Noah connection. Dennis.
Yep, my wife's family goes back, I went to one of their gatherings and there are many Mormons in the family going back a ways. We were up in, outside of Prescott, Arizona, and we had a gathering and they had a linear on butcher paper on 3 10-foot tables, started with Adam and Eve and worked up to Doris and Dennis Fromming, all the way with a few gaps, of course. But they started Adam and Eve on the right and moved all the way over to the left. Went back to 0. I couldn't believe my eyes. It took the woman who was working on it was the whole group. Had been at it for 20 years, viewing all the libraries of the Mormon Church and all the libraries in America and Europe to track back Prince Joseph of wherever. But it was you could have spent all day looking at that doggone thing.
Yeah.
It was rather fascinating. Hard, a lot of work. So,
Well, yeah, okay, we'll pick up, we'll go through the names next week. We'll pick it up and we'll just move into the, Tower of Babel. But yeah, that's what makes this something to, and here's the other thing. And this is why we need to read them. We need to read them name by name. Okay? Because these are people who made the Bible. I mean, they made it into the Bible. I didn't make it into the Bible. There's no prophet gene in the Bible. There should be. Well, I've got it written in my Bible, but you all should have it too. Like, yeah, these are people, even if it's just by mention of their name or their name leads you to that family group that ended up, out there somewhere. These people made the Bible. Let me do Ray, we'll do Andy, then we'll call it quits.
Well, you have to remember what happened in the book of Daniel, that the Babylonians, when they took those people captive, that they changed their names so that they would misidentify them and they're no longer under their name, but the name that they were given. And even in the Bible, it's the current name that they were given, not the old name.
Yeah, no, and that's a big deal, is to steal people's identities, and the story was when my grandfather came over, when he went to Ellis Island, they changed his name. Yeah, they changed his name so it wouldn't be so difficult. And I think they did it for good reason. I mean, so it wouldn't be so difficult on those people, to have to be in a new country, a new society, and now you've got this funny name, too, that nobody. What's that? They missed that one. Okay, Andy, then we're done.
My mother, her family were old-time people, name. And they had tremendous fire, forest fires. She and her cousin went out doing the ancestry visit from town to town, all the newspapers and there and whatever, one summer long, and the best information we got by far was from the church.
Yeah.
Much more than
No, trust me, it used to be important. I mean, it was. What do we have here? We have the red book here. Is it the red book? And we keep it in the fireproof safe, right? And whether anybody will ever use it, I don't know. Maybe we use it for invitations and stuff like that. But again, that's an old tradition that comes from churches. You register names and baptisms and then you try to keep it safe, but it's completely foreign to us. To the point where what I read from that William F. Albright, where he said that it was stands absolutely alone in ancient literature without a remote parallel, even among the Greeks, etc. Makes chapter 10 probably a lot more important than you probably would have thought of when you walked in. At least I hope it did, like that. So we'll close. We'll pick up with the names next week. Read through the list of names, work on the pronunciation. I think this is just a heads up. I if I remember right, I haven't read a King James Bible in a long time or paid attention, but I think in the old King James Bibles, they used to put accent marks to divide the names so you can pronounce them correctly or have a better shot. They'll have like a name and they'll have a little thing in between, to do that, to help you pronounce them. Because what do those British people know of, if you ever look at the King James Bible and I forget which book it's in, some Old Testament, book, and it's talking about the princes or, royalty in the family, and they call them dukes. Because that's what they call them in England. And in the Bible, they call them, in the King James Bible, they call them dukes. Yeah. Okay, let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Kingdom come. God, earth is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Praise God.
Thank you.